Welcome back, and we're going to have the Q&A with Jen. Who's first up?
Jen, with phones, is there voice activation to prompt things to come up? Like, because my daughter's having a baby and there's talk about it, suddenly I'm getting on Instagram, buy this, and the thing that I saw was an app for babies to use, like blocks and colours and everything. So I'm like, isn't that them getting used to using screens? And
Absolutely, it is.
Yeah.
I mean, the marketing is starting at a very young age. If your microphone is on, so I shut my microphone off every single app so that the phone can't hear it, because I'm not exactly sure how it works, but there's definitely something about what you talk about and what you get in terms of advertising. So one other tip, I think it was a recent update, locations have become precise. So you have to go into every app and deselect precise location because it's automatically on. And we really don't need them knowing exactly where we are every second of the day. So I've turned it off every single thing, even my maps. And then if I need to use the map, I'll allow once, and that's it.
Wow.
But the marketing, this is why I'm saying, as parents, we can't wait for the big tech companies to make any changes. There's so much money in this that we'd be waiting forever. They definitely aren't. And unfortunately, then there are a lot of parents who don't have the education, who think this looks fantastic, this is obviously educational. It's not. It's actually the next thing I'm going to be having a closer look at, because I'm so opposed to BYOD in schools. I'm going to be taking a closer look at some of the literature in terms of learning and what's more beneficial.
What that is with the microphone-related things is that's advertiser data companies are collecting your data and then selling it to advertisers. And a lot of companies like Apple, they like to have these little indicators on your phone to actually tell you if your camera or your microphone's being used, and they actually have things in place to prevent your data from being, leaked out or, sold. They like to keep the privacy everywhere, or, internal to you. However, Apple has now started going, we'd like to get into the business of tracking people and advertising them, just like, what was the point of all that advertising? So that's what that is.
Wow.
And you can go in and disable a lot of things, and Apple does make it very transparent for app tracking stuff. They make it very easy for you to actually block that kind of stuff from happening, so no one can track you.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah.
So that's a good plug for Apple. We're not going to get sued. Okay, who's next?
I was just going to say, so it's one thing for parents to know and understand what you're saying, but did you have troubles communicating this with your children with conflict back that would then lead them to want to be, I suppose, rebellious and get a phone and their own pocket money and hide that from you? How do you communicate with them without... Did they understand, or did you find that they just didn't, like, because I would be concerned that as a 14 or 15-year-old when I worked, that I would just... I thought I was a good kid, but I would maybe have gone behind my mum's back if she said I couldn't have a phone, and got that with my own money if I didn't quite understand how important it was.
So with my daughter, I had no trouble.
Yeah.
She'd had her scare, and she wasn't arguing with anything. She was totally happy. With my son, he understood. He understood my concerns. From my understanding, you also have to be 18 to be able to get any kind of contract with a phone. So of course you are looking for burner phones the whole time, and I did. I would, be putting the laundry away for a while in his bedroom, just to make sure. I was lucky. I know that there are other children who were. I mean, if we live in an affluent area, there's bound to be kids who are happy to hand over a second-hand phone. But I guess at the end of the day, I did have a lot of very honest conversations with them, very, very open. And I think they did get it, especially my daughter, but my son did get it. And once he'd gone through some of what he went through, especially the cyberbullying, and definitely the sexting incident, because they only got phones at 14, so it was a bit later for them. Everything that I was saying kind of was crystallized for them, really. They understood.
Yeah.
As for the pocket money, that was just a no-go area. So I just said, you're not allowed to use your money on anything tech. But they listened. But you are right, it is an area that some children, depending on who they are, may be rebellious. And then again, that's when we as parents have to put in a lot of time talking to our children. I think there's no point in just saying, no, it's not going to happen, forget about it. We have to spend a lot of time investing in talking with our children. Not only that, we need to be on the apps. We need to know what we're talking about, right? That's what I did. Every single app I got on and had a look. So I'd be able to say, oh, it's okay. And in the end, that opened up all these other conversations. I remember once my son showing me a video, and it was a very distressing video. It was of a girl being beaten up, and she actually ended up having a seizure. And he said, I can't look at it. If someone has tagged me in it on, I think it was Instagram, or he said, I can't look at it. I've accidentally seen it. And I said to him, so if I were to look up, I don't know, violence or anything, any hashtag, would I find it? And he said, no. He said, the hashtags and how we tag each other in is way more complex than that. So what it did is, I suppose, the more you engage and you try and ask questions and you seem curious, the more they're going to talk to you and the more comfortable. And I guess all of that together forms a relationship. And I think that's really crucial.
Okay.
Yeah.
Just as you're saying that, do you think that there's a lack of sitting around the table in the evening, having dinner together, parents and children? Do you think we've lost that generally?
Absolutely,
Yeah.
absolutely.
Yeah.
I mean, there's no doubt about that.
Yeah.
As well as that, there are a lot of, I was at my daughter's graduation last week. So this is, we're at this event, and there was a huge round table next to us. Every single parent and child at that table, this is a dinner, were on their phones. And so, I think even when there is a dinner with family, often the father's checking his messages, and it's completely disjointed. We banned all phones from anywhere near the dinner table. But I think you are right. There's just not enough time invested in just being with our kids.
Makes a difference when everybody's on the same page. One parent, I've had that struggle with our kids. My husband's fully into the IT and he relies on it because it's his work, and it's that way. And
Right.
I'm like, well, no, you've got to look at your kids and what they're seeing. So I've had that battle from day one. So if you're not on the same page, it's really difficult.
It is really difficult. And my former husband was similar. He was in IT and he didn't think there was anything wrong at all. And it was a challenge, which is why I chose to provide the device, and I chose to give the device with the parental controls. But and that's also where the conversations had to come in, because I knew they may go over there and, don't know what they were always allowed to do. So I do appreciate that that's really, really difficult. But then again, you see, your husband, this is what I get a lot of. I get a lot of my husband's in IT, and he thinks, they don't really actually have any understanding about what's going on online in terms of online safety.
I think they're ignorant.
Yes.
I think they would know, but they're just very, well, my husband, I know, he's very driven down one road.
Yeah,
so,
that's right, exactly. And that's a problem,
Yeah.
We don't really want this stuff happening to our children.
No, I had my daughter down when she was, I think, 15, and I ended up taking her down to the police station. The police showed her what's on the other side of the screen.
So I had her, she was 15, and then I had my youngest. For some reason, the middle one wasn't there. So the youngest one remembers that,
Yes,
and that's why it was important for her to come along, because they need consequence,
definitely.
teenagers. So that was real life consequence, and so it's impacted on the younger one to see that, you know.
That's fantastic.
Yeah.
There are a few documentaries I'll mention at the very end, which I think are really, really great for parents. And there are a couple that you could watch with teenagers, not young children.
I think one of the things, though, we're so time poor now, and a lot of split families. So mum's flat out, she might have 3 kids there trying to get dinner ready and all that, and it's very hard to keep an eye on everything that's going on. But if they're allowed to, when they go to their dad's place, to have plenty of time on the equipment, you can't win that battle. Like, I tried getting my son, I said to my son one time when he was at my place, when you're here, how about we decide on how much time do you think is fair enough to be on your equipment each afternoon? And he said, I don't know. And I said, well, I tell you what, I think maybe an hour at the most, and maybe you get more if you've done some things that you're supposed to have done, your homework and other bits. And he said, well, if that's what you're going to do, I'm going to go and live with Dad. And that's exactly what he did. So you can't, you know, you're up against things like
I've
that.
heard this a lot, and you know, in my situation, we were a blended family, and there was, you know, there was also, so my stepchildren didn't follow the same rules as mine because that was what our concern was. But and I guess with me, I was fortunate in that my former husband just let me be the dominant parent. But that does happen, and I've heard that more than once. And you know, again, this is about overall education of parents, and it's both fathers and mothers. Often it's the mothers who are worried about this stuff, and I never see many fathers at these online safety talks. The majority of members of my group are mothers. We need fathers to step up as well. We really do. It's just, yeah, and I'm sorry that happened because, you know, that is, I suppose, yeah, that's partly why some parents just don't push it.
And I've heard too that single mothers that have these teenage boys, they're stronger than them, and they
are
get very
stronger.
aggressive.
Yes,
Oh,
and
yeah.
Because they get so addicted to the device or
Yes.
to the game, and
It's the gaming that's
they're in
we're
fear.
seeing,
The mothers
yes.
are in fear of doing it.
Absolutely,
So that's
yes.
another factor.
I mean, gaming is my other pet hate.
Yeah.
And I've on my website, I've got a gaming fact sheet for parents, which goes into some of the details about gaming, and we have seen in the practice as well, the violence. So I completely believe you. I've had a couple of parents in consultations who've also raised this with me, and I guess I may not have it always correct, but I tend to call their bluff, so I would call the cops. I've said, the moment you feel threatened and unsafe, you have the right to call the police.
Which would be education.
And the police are seeing a lot of they're getting these calls quite regularly now. So, yeah, that's my advice.
Peter, is it okay to ask you to talk on this?
Yeah, sure.
Cool. What would you like to say on this whole subject?
Well, look, I mean, in the practice, as Jen said, we're seeing a curious sort of profile in recent years, where I've seen a number of parents who have been, like threatened, seriously threatened by children because of the threat of taking their devices away. And it just shows you the intensity of that sort of attachment when it comes to social media and gaming. You know, that's the other sort of area that's really huge. And I agree that in essence it comes down to establishing sort of authority in the situation, and if necessary, one uses external authority, you know, like legal authority, literally. I've seen parents who've taken out AVOs against their children, you know, because of threats connected with technology.
Wow. Wow. Yep.
In the last 2 weeks, I've heard of 2 cases, both girls, where the mothers tried to take the phone off them because of something that's gone on, and they've both threatened to kill themselves. Now, if you ask someone, what do you do at a time like that, you have to give the phone back, because you've got to take that threat seriously. You can't take that phone and hope for the best, you know, you give the phone back. So, and that's how teenagers, I mean, they're quite, not conniving, what's the word?
Manipulative? No, sorry.
Manipulative, that was the word I was trying to say. Manipulative, and they know what can achieve the results that they want. So,
But isn't that part of being a teenager,
Yeah.
to push boundaries, to see what, as adults,
Yep.
we will allow them to...
Yep.
Yes, well, I can only remember one incident with my son when he wanted his phone longer in the evening, and he said to me, I don't feel safe, and I just want to listen to some music. And I said to him, you don't feel safe? I said, well, we need to go straight up to Hornsby. I said, if you don't feel safe, we need to go to Hornsby. But we may be there all night because of the triage, but, you know. And he said, no, you don't need to. I said, listen, you've just told me you don't feel safe. If we don't go to Hornsby, I'm calling the ambulance, so you choose. And very quickly he said, oh, no, I feel a bit better now. But I was absolutely serious. I would have driven to Hornsby and sat there all night, because I think there's too much of this going on. And the problem with that is that we're missing the kids who really need it and who really are serious. There's an awful lot of threats of self-harm and suicide. And it's saturated the system.
You do have to take them seriously.
You do. So in that case, I would have been that mother. I would have said, I'm calling an ambulance right now if you're feeling this unsafe. I just think that that shows them that you're taking it seriously and that you're hearing what they're saying.
Yeah.
So, but it does concern me, the overall flippancy where a child can, and I mean, I'm not commenting on this case because I don't know the situation with these 2 girls, but there are cases I've seen where the kids will threaten that, but they're just saying it, and they don't understand the gravity of what they're saying. I've held my son distraught when I had to tell him that his friend had passed away. It was impossible to explain. He just looked at me and said, I'm never going to see him again. I had no words to comfort him. And I think that is the gravity of suicide. So I am concerned about how easily children are using language that have very serious connotations. And that includes pedo, that includes rape me. These are comments that kids are using just like that. And they're not understanding what it actually means. And that's the desensitization. So...
They don't think consequentially.
No,
do they? No,
not at all, not at all. But, you know, I've stopped when I've heard that rape me, and I've stopped and said, right, let's talk rape. What is going on here? Because this was with my son and a group of friends, and someone made that comment. He said, oh, no, Mum, it just means she kind of, likes that person. I said, no. Listen, there's no liking with rape, so let's talk. And I was that boring parent who just would latch onto any little thing and go with it. But then I did have friends come to me, some of his friends with issues that they needed help with. So I think it's connection. It's all about connection.
I think everything's about connection.
It is. I agree with you. Everything is about connection.
When the phone is disconnection.
That's right.
Computers are disconnection.
You know, kids don't ring each other because their phone's not just for gaming and social media, but it's the way they communicate by text.
I know.
My daughter won't ring me for love nor money, but she'll text me, and then we might have to text each other 30 times to get the message across. It would take,
Yes.
Yes. So
That's right.
yeah.
So yes.
You know what I started using on my mobile? I figured this out. You know how if you're going to text someone and it's like, oh, and of course texting, like the actual words, if you look at the communication model, the actual words themselves is only 10% of the communication model. Tone volume adds 35%, and then of course body language is the rest. So you know how when you're texting you can also record a message? I've started to do that, yeah? because it's so much easier to get clarity and
Yeah.
No, I twigged on that one because a friend of mine, her daughters, they're in their 30s, and I always get well, you know, we're millennials, we don't talk on the phone.
Yeah.
And I said, but you know, words are only 10%.
Yes.
When you text, leave a
Yes,
message.
well, sometimes I actually, on Messenger, will actually just record and send the voice recording. So even if it's 10 seconds, it's
Yeah.
like, hey, what are you doing tonight?
Yeah.
They're hearing my voice.
Yes,
Yeah, no,
yes.
Good point.
Yeah.
No?
Good point. Yeah.
Yeah.
I also don't like to text. I'm a very emotional person. I hate texting. I like to call people
Yeah.
because I
And things
like
can be
emotion.
misconstrued when you text
Exactly.
because it might come across much more gruff than what
Yep.
it is.
Yes, I got into trouble a few
Someone
years.
was in a hurry.
If you put full stop at the end, it means you're cross. I didn't know that. My son called me and said, why are you cross with me? I said, what are you talking about? He said, no, you put a full stop.
Oh dear, so many people think I'm cross then.
I never put a full stop.
Because that's what we were taught.
I didn't put exclamation marks.
Yeah.
Oh.
I like putting in expressions so that people know what I'm on about.
And caps and you're shouting, so, you know.
Yeah.
Well, that one we know. Okay,
Yes.
so what about a book? All books and articles have full stops.
Yes, I know.
So does that mean we're all cross?
Angry authors.
Jane?
So ridiculous. But this is changing all the time.
Yes.
What
yeah.
we found out last, week is going to be different in 6 months' time.
Yeah.
So,
And obviously the humour we're using here, it's not in any way devaluing the subject matter. I guess it's just helping to, what's the word I'm after? Defrag?
yes.
Because this is a very heavy-duty conversation. Just on that, because when you and I met up and were talking about the addiction
Yes.
of that, and I asked you, so I'd like you to explain that more in depth to the way you explained it to me at the time, in how it is. Oh, that's right. You were talking about some guy in America
Yes.
who had done that behaviour of porn and getting.
He hadn't ventured into child sexual
No,
abuse.
but can you talk about him
Yes.
and then talk about, like when someone takes drugs, they have to do heavier, more
That's
duty
right,
drugs to
yes.
get the hit.
Yes.
Can you also
Yes.
talk about,
So this I heard him speak a few years ago. His name is Gabe Deem, and he founded Reboot Nation, which was really for porn addicts. And he was addicted to pornography from about the age of, I think, 11, if I can. And what he said he noticed was that he'd be watching something and a clip would come up and he'd be like, oh God, no, never, no way will I click on that. And then he found himself eventually clicking on it and watching it, and then afterwards feeling really ashamed. But what he talked about was how you need more extreme content to have the same result. And he did say that by the time I think he was 24, he could no longer get an erection with his partner. She stayed with him. He quit. Took him 9 months to I guess, re-find his actual natural libido. But and they are now married, so it's a very happy ending story. But that is happening. We're getting there are more and more children at younger and younger ages, boys in particular, who are struggling with issues like erectile dysfunction. So, and then again, you've got that, and you've got the extremity of the content. So,
Okay, so basically what I'm hearing is it's not a huge stretch of the imagination for a young boy, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, total access to porn, to then as he goes into teenagehood, into a young man, he is going to go into more, I'm going to use the word perverse acts against
genre, yes.
children, young children, animals, etc. Yet again, as adults, we've created the environment for that innocent young child who ends up
Yes.
doing that
We have.
totally perverse paedophile behaviour.
We have, and unfortunately, the pornography industry makes billions.
Yeah.
Billions.
Industry, like
Yes, in the gaming industry. They
Set up for people.
I think I read somewhere, that, Pornhub alone, I think, has more, I don't know, views than Amazon. There were about 4 different of the, very popular TV channels. And all of those combined, Pornhub had more views. I mean, I find it quite challenging at times. I mean, I've pulled up the Pornhub reports to try to read through it, but there comes a point when you have to pause for your own health. Yeah.
And that's the point. How do you manage to, the word sane, how do you manage to, seriously, to keep a sanity here? Because you're dealing with some of the darkest, and our most innocent and fragile.
Yes, I think uni helps. I'm doing it really slowly, 1 unit at a time. But when I'm busy with something, an assignment, I'm forced to think of other things. We go away 4 times a year just up the coast, and we all enjoy being outdoors, fishing and doing. And that's really therapeutic. And I upcycle furniture, so I just take old pieces of furniture and make it all look pretty, and that's so therapeutic for me. I find that so helpful. I've been doing a lot more of that recently because I've been finding myself getting a little bit, just stretched, if you want. Because it is hard when you have an 8-year-old who you're still having to navigate through, who is spending 2 nights ago couldn't sleep because he was terrified of werewolves. Didn't matter what I said to him, the children in school were talking about werewolves. And it's like, you can just see what's ahead of you, so it is stressful. But the most I can do is talk to him.
But I can't help but think the depravity that you see must, and it's just deplorable, a lot of the stuff you must be seeing, and you're dealing with it so often. How does your head escape that? Does it not ever make you, you must feel like you can't trust many people out there.
I don't trust many people, I don't.
Yeah,
I don't look
right?
at any material. I should just say I don't look at any material.
But you hear what these people do.
Yes, I do. I've got to be quite strict with myself. There has to be a cutoff at what point I have a look at material. And a few weeks ago I made the mistake of seeing the TikTok video of the boys from Knox by the crime reporter, and that was 11:30 at night. I was so wound up because of what they were saying. So do have to have certain rules in place and be disciplined about that. The Internet Watch Foundation report was really hard to read. It was really hard. I try not to read too many of the AFP posts because they're quite frequent, and I actually at one stage considered, filing them to see how many are being caught. It's just overwhelming. But I guess I am learning more to take a stand back and to say, it's okay if you don't know that bit of information. You just have to look after yourself. So there's a lot of conscious self-preservation.
Yeah, you have to.
It's not always easy. So,
No,
there are moments when you just break down and you're just like, the world is hell. But I've got some really amazing people in my safety team and who I can always call and say, look, I'm feeling stressed out about this. So we support each other. Exactly. So, but we need our safe spaces. It's so important to have. And I'd say, my home, I've managed to create that. And so I try very hard not to let too much filter in. Because with work, managing the psychiatric practice and Not My Kid, it can be a bit of a waiting time bomb, a ticking time bomb, sorry.
Yeah.
Any last questions?
Sorry, Jen, you were going to say something about some recent documentaries which you think
yes.
are very useful.
So there are a few documentaries which I'd really recommend. One is called Childhood 2.0. It is available on YouTube, and it is probably the number 1 on my list. My husband and I watched it together. There's a lot about mental health there as well, but it's also talking from the children are interviewed, children, adolescents, and it goes up the generations. And so you just get an idea of how this is affecting our children. The most, I suppose, almost sad moment was when the teenagers were saying how they think we had better childhoods because we didn't have phones, which was really eye-opening. Another documentary, which is made by Our Kids, is it Our Kids Online. I think it's called Porn and Predators or something like that. That can be found on Vimeo. But if you look up Our Kids Online, they're based in New Zealand. It's a fantastic documentary. It's quite upbeat, but they actually go, it's a couple who invested their own money, traveled to America and interviewed people about predators and porn. And then finally, there is a documentary that's on, is it SBS on demand?
Definitely not SBS on demand, yeah.
The Children in the Pictures. So that, The Children in the Pictures, and that is following the work of Task Force Argos. And again, I think that's really important for parents to understand, watch, because if they watched it, they'd understand how big the problem is. Yeah, so they infiltrate forums within the dark web. One forum had over 2.5 million members. And they show you the class, it's ticking up. So they infiltrate forums within the dark web to try to take down the entire forum. And so what they do is throughout the movie, they'll show you that we infiltrated this one, this is how many members, this is how many children were rescued. The last forum they show you is still active, and they watch it ticking up, and where it goes over 2 million members, and that's just one forum. But it's really worth watching, because I think that parents still live in this bubble of denial, and if we really understood how big the problem is, and they also, the last half an hour, talk about this idea of self-generated content, where the predator's actually telling the child what to do, and sextortion, which is sextortion, which is a huge problem.
All these new words.
It's a huge problem. Yeah.
Jen, as we finish, can I ask you to look into the camera, and whatever you feel to say to parents in what it is you would like to see them do to keep their children safe, one parent at a time, what would you say?
I'd ask you to delay access to social media, gaming, online world for as long as possible. It's your best chance of preserving your child's imagination and their childhood. We have to remember the internet isn't age segregated. So once they are allowed online, they will be exposed in one way or another. So I'd encourage you to delay.
Jen, Hoey, thank you so very much.
Pleasure.
Thank you, thank you, thank you. Thank you.